So it is 5 o'clock, and I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the regular work session for the City Council, Minnetrista, June 6, 2022. First order, I'm going to start out by introductions. We have our City Clerk, Don Motzko, here. We have Director of Administration, Ali Paulfus. I'm sure our Public Works Superintendent, Gary Peters, will be joining us. And then we have our City Engineer, Allison Fauski. Council members, we have Kathleen Refkin and McGregor. Good to have you here. And John Chemperlin, Pam Mortensen. I'm Lisa Whalen. I'm the mayor. Next to me, we have our City Administrator, Jasper Krugel. Brian Grimm, Finance Director, David Abel, Community Development Director, and Paul Falls, Chief of Police. So welcome, everyone. I'm sure you're here for the road discussion. So as I explained to these two people earlier, we don't generally take comments during the work session, but we'll see how it goes. So with that, we're going to start out by, who's going to do the personnel? Compensation
Mr.
study and
Krugel.
review. Okay.
I can get started, and then Allie and I can kind of take team it from there. So I'll just briefly go out. There's a memo with a lot of information out there. We've talked to the personnel committee. Not much has changed since that meeting. But just kind of a recap. David Brown and Associates, DDA, we'll just call them for short, was commissioned to do a compensation study for the city of Minnetrista. Allie and I have kind of nudged them in the direction to kind of look at a couple other things other than compensation, and they've been very, very good at that at no additional charge. So they've looked at some of the things with our scoring and our personnel things, kind of more of a classification type endeavor as well. But what they did really was focus on the compensation side. So at the end of this exercise, we've identified a few things that we should consider. One of those things is a new pay plan for the city of Minnetrista. That's a recommendation from DDA. And what that basically is, and you'll see this if you're familiar with the materials, is a grade step table that's been included. So consider for adoption that new pay plan. The second thing to consider for adoption is the pay plan policy. And there's three options that have been included in the packet. And really what that pay plan policy is how do we implement this pay plan? We're proposing a June 1st kind of retro active implementation for 2022, but then there were some questions that were brought up at the personnel committee about, well, what does that mean for 2023? How does that affect the budget? So those three options are described in that manner so that those can be evaluated. The third thing is to consider adoption of the employee placement into that plan. There's resolution and those are the people are put into place according to their time that they've been at the city, the experience that they've had, and kind of where they fell into the general pecking order of things prior to this pay plan. And then there's one promotion, Gary Peters, to consider, and that's moving Gary from Public Works Superintendent to Director of Public Works. So that's a recommendation. So. That's kind of where we're going to try to get to tonight. And what we've done is we've set aside some time at the work session to talk about these things. And then we have queued up various resolutions and things of that nature to be considered at the meeting after this, the regular meeting. So looking at the comparison communities, so we looked at 16 cities, and not every single community has a one-to-one match for employee job description. So we weren't able to have 16 comparisons for every job description we have here, but we used what was available with those 16 cities: Becker, Big Lake, Buffalo, Corcoran, Excelsior, Independence, Medina, Monticello, Mound, Orono, Rogers, St. Michael, Shorewood, Victoria, Waconia, and Wayzata. And those are what we're considering our market cities. What we've also done is we've looked at what are called regional competitors. And really, that's kind of a risk assessment. Where are our employees potentially going to move to if they're going to get promoted or move to a bigger city? Those regional competitors there are just as a checkpoint. They're not actually used in any of the data analysis, but just kind of hey, here's what our regional competitors are paying, positioning ourselves. And the recommendation is somewhere between the market and the competitors to kind of retain our employees that we have. And if anybody would happen to retire or leave, then that would also help us with recruitment. So the regional competitors, and that was, I believe, the second sheet on the supplemental spreadsheet PDF stuff that was included in this. That shows the comparison between the market and the regional, and then where we're at right now at Minnetrista. So overall, the market analysis indicated on average, now this varies from position to position, that we're 13% below market. And some positions are at market, some positions are 25+% below. So on average, so just kind of get the sense of where we're at in Minnetrista, we're 13% below market, our market comparison. So moving on to the proposed pay plan, this proposed pay plan has 12 grades and 10 steps. Each grade has a separation of 10%, and each step has a proposed separation that varies depending on longevity. You'll see on the pay plan that steps 2 and 3 have a 2.5% increase. 4, 5, and 6 are at 3. 7, 8, 9, and 10 are at 3.5. That was a recommendation from the Personnel Committee to move that in that direction. So that does incentivize longevity here. As you stay longer, you'll receive a larger step increase if that's the policy that's adopted by council. This is very similar to what has been adopted for the union contracts that you've seen in the past for those collective bargaining agreements, where there's a grade step and a graduated step increase percentage based on longevity. So it's something that the group should be familiar with. Now I'll point to Allie on this one. What we currently have is a grade program that has, I believe, is it 22 grades?
Correct.
So 22 grades. So we're basically compressing our current down from 22 to 12. And you can see logically there's some groupings of upper management, mid-management, entry-level positions. And having a grade, that the grades that go through 1 through 12 is helpful in actually kind of keeping those all kind of together. I'm not exactly sure the history or why we have currently so many grades. But really with the size of our workforce, the recommendation from DDA is to kind of compress that. So that's what's being proposed as far as the pay plan structure, that 12 grades and 10 steps. So we'll kind of jump into implementation costs. So what we're proposing, and it's driven by some action City Council took at the previous meeting to retain a couple of employees that were looking elsewhere. But we're looking for a June 1st implementation, so kind of retro back 5 days if it is approved tonight. The total cost to implement on June 1st is $131,000, a little bit over that. One thing to note is that there's a 2022 budget surplus related to salaries of about $63,000. That was indicated in the last quarterly report. It's a little bit more than that, actually, I think now. That's due to the vacant city administrator position for some time. And then there's some public works superintendent overtime savings potentially with the promotion, because right now our superintendent is an hourly employee who receives overtime. And then various non-union turnovers. So there's been some turnovers that have accumulated some of that surplus. So the net general fund impact, so that's kind of one key component that we've identified is how is this going to affect the levy for the rest of the year, and can we handle it, is $54,637.18. That's, again, estimated. And then the net enterprise fund, so again, enterprise fund, water, sewer, stormwater, cable fund, that impact is just over $13,000. So the net total implementation cost to do this on June 1st is $68,011.97 projected. So, and what we're projecting, the finance director and myself, is to use some of that fund balance. If you remember from our audit, we're at about 59% fund balance. We have a policy that says we should be somewhere between 40 and 50. Now, we've done some things in 2022 to spend down that, move some money around. So we actually are deficit spending in 2022 to get that number down a little bit. So, but I think it escapes me a little bit, but I think we're projected to be at about 53.5% at the end of the year if we implement this, if I remember right. Somewhere in that range, low 50s, we'll say. So 2023 budget consideration. So this is kind of where the pay plan policy comes in place, and those are the three options that you see. A traditional way of implementing this is to do everything on January 1st. And that'd be the city council determined cost of living adjustment. So I believe last year was it 3% for 2022?
I think it's
2.75%. So council during the budget formation process will say, well, we want to do a cost of living adjustment of X amount. That's the COLA increase that the employee would see on January 1. And then there would be a step increase if that step is available. So if somebody's not at a step 10, which we won't have anybody if implemented in this manner at a step 10, they would receive a step as well on January 1. The budget impact for 2023 budget considerations is $268,508. Of that, the general fund impact, and that's looking at how those wages are split between the employees, between the general fund and the enterprise fund, is just under $215,000, and then enterprise fund is $53,700. So, and then the second option has the cost of living increase on January 1, and then the step increase on July 1 of 2023. So at the 6-month mark, an employee would then receive that step. That does save, on average, probably about 1.75% or 1.5% from the city standpoint, or about $12,000. And then the third option that we've outlined is just a COLA increase in 2023, and that's kind of where we're at right now. I think it's I don't know if you can assume this or I can assume this, but if we're just doing COLA, the likelihood of us falling behind the market because we're not doing the step increase is high. So you can expect to kind of continue to fall behind the market. And from my perspective of looking at this kind of coming in recently, that's I think what's happened over the last 10 years. And that's why we're at where we're at right now. So those are the three options that have been outlined. And those are kind of determined by the personnel committee to kind of throw out there. The next item is the public works superintendent promotion. So really what this is...
Do you want to talk about one first, or do you want to have everything
together?
Sure. One first. One at a time.
Okay, one at a time. Okay, so let's talk about this first.
Okay, perfect.
Then we'll move on.
Yes.
All right.
Let's go.
All right. Questions?
In the process of taking 22 grades and compressing them to 12, what was the logic in how the hourly rates, I mean, if that's easily explainable?
Yeah, so each position has a score associated with it, right? So we basically made those score ranges for each grade larger and looked and see if did it make sense. Where an employee would fall, did it make sense on the proposed grade plan? So there's no real formula to it. It's just kind of a gut check, and we ran this by the department heads to look and see, well, is there going to be any animosity amongst subordinate employees, to make sure that it makes sense. But really what you have is you have a compressed grades, right? But you just have a larger point range in each grade.
And I'll also add to that, the grade hierarchy was established back in 2017. So we kept the hierarchy in place, just the grades changed. So no one moved above anyone except for Gary will move and Nick will move because of their promotions. But the hierarchy is intact. Just the grade thresholds have changed.
Well, I think a few of the grades a few of the lower ones weren't used and a few of the higher ones weren't used.
Correct.
So a few of them were irrelevant or not.
Yep, so grades like 1 through 5 weren't even used in our old system. I'm not sure why there was so many, but I think it just was established that way and never checked.
Is that questions?
No. Jasper, I just have one here. On this page here, I don't know what page it is.
I think it's page...
Where you did option 1, 2, and 3.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
What was 2022 budget total? So we can compare to what the budget impact is. I know it's probably in here somewhere.
It's about $5.4 million total general fund.
Total budget was
general fund.
General fund.
5.375 million.
Yep.
Not too far out.
Pretty close.
Okay. So it would be this approximately, depending on which one you go with, about a 4 to 5% increase, depending on which one you go with. For the general fund budget. So one of the things we did talk about at the Personnel Committee is looking, if you look at the comparisons and so on, and what's happening in the market today is salaries are going up significantly. And the other thing that's happening, particularly in the city or government field, municipal field, is not enough people. A lot of people are leaving, and not enough people are coming in. So there's this void. And so, as you know, I mean, with the police are one, but it's also general administration individuals that we're having a hard time bringing on board, just because of the small pool of applicants. So that's one of the reasons we wanted to take a look at this, as you know, and that's one of the reasons why the Personnel Committee is recommending this, because we want to make sure that not only do we retain the good employees that we have, but that we can also, if some leave, that we can also bring new good ones on board.
Yeah, the anyone that I've spoken to has read the notes and gone through the whole thing. They've said wonderful things about the study. They think it's very complete. They think it's an excellent study, and most people are cognizant of the fact that there aren't enough, that there are staff shortages throughout everything, so you would expect staff shortages to also be in the public sector. Mm-hmm. And no one wants to lose the people we have that know how to do their jobs. So I don't have any more questions.
Okay.
Mine's more of a general question. Why would we do the COLA and step increases versus just yearly merit increases?
That's a good question. I can, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I would generalize. There's different pay plans that you can have as an organization, right? We had one of them, and it was just kind of a grade system with a COLA built in. I think that what we're proposing right here is the next logical step, right? Call it a baby step. To, we have a grade step system. That's the norm. I think Allie's done some research calling around to other organizations. Most organizations around us have a grade step system. The next plan that you see municipalities going to is a merit-based, performance-based system. There's a couple things that we would need to do to move into that. We're not, in my opinion, quite ready yet. We need to have a very robust performance management system to be able to kind of, warrant increases merit-based. But, it's something that we could look at. We're probably a couple years out to being able to do that if it's something that we want to look at. But that's kind of the next thing that a municipality could look at, and I don't think there's anything above that, really. As a municipality, you can't offer merit pay, let's say bonuses or anything like that, but you can say, well, if on your performance review you average 4.5 points out of 5, that means you're going to get an 8% increase this year, or if you're at a 3, you only get a 3%, something like that. So I'm familiar with those types of plans as well. So it's something we could look at in the future. I think there's a couple other steps that would lead up to that if we would ever want to look at that. So probably at least a couple years out.
And it might be worth looking at, eventually, I think. It's a good point. Mm-hmm.
Is the COLA increase guaranteed based on this, or does council still decide pending what the economy is doing?
We decide on the COLA every year. So during our budget process, we will decide on the COLA. We can actually even decide on the step increases if we want to make changes. But so that's actually an annual thing that that the council would review. Mm-hmm.
I think a few of us have lived through some, I'm sure everyone has some 0% COLA increases, when times were really tough 10, 15 years ago. So, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So are we on? So then I think staff wants to know, are we option 1, option 2, option 3? Any thoughts there?
Well, I like option 2.
I like option 2.
I'm with option 2 as well.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm. So implementing it. Okay, hold on. Implementing it starting June 1st. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Then on January 1st, it's a COLA increase. Mm-hmm. We'll decide on that % later. And then January 1, we'll implement the step increase.
July 1.
I'm sorry. Yes, I'm reading. Reading and talking at the same time. All right. Okay. Sounds
Very good. So we have a resolution queued up for the regular meeting. We just need to fill in the blank of option 2, and then the option 2 pay plan that you see in this packet will be included in that resolution attached to that. So there'll be some documentation there. So
And the promotion, obviously.
Well, that's what we're getting to next.
Oh, beautiful.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
yeah.
Next.
So one of the outcomes of this was looking at the public works superintendent position, and the recommendation from our group, DDA, the personnel committee, is to promote the public works superintendent, Gary Peters, to the director of public works. So the position has grown into what we would call a director level position, right? And I think that from my perspective, watching Gary at council meetings while I was looking at Minnetrista to come work here, it appeared, Gary's the director of public works, right? So everything kind of lines up, and this kind of moves Gary into that position, and he's actually been doing it, in my opinion. So, and he's looking at, he manages people, he manages autonomously, he's doing a lot of things on his own. So he's definitely fulfilling that position. So that's the recommendation. We have a resolution to move Gary from that. It's a non-exempt position into an exempt position, so hourly to salary. And then placing him within the proposed pay plan. He'll be at a director level position, placed in there accordingly, and that's how we would implement this. So there's a resolution that Allie's queued up for the regular meeting that has all that outlined, that you'd have the ability to take action on if you choose at the regular meeting.
So I'm just going to say this. All of you have worked a little bit with Gary. I've had the pleasure and honor of working with Gary for nearly 8 years, and I can tell you he is well deserving of this. And I know a lot of residents feel the same way, because he bends over backwards and tries to fix things and make things right. So thank you, Gary, for your service to our city. I know, like I said, you really go the extra mile a lot of times. So thank you. So I think he's well deserving of it. So
I agree.
I agree.
Thank you, Gary.
I just have one question. When he becomes director of public works, do we need a superintendent then also? Is there someone between a director and his nearest underling? I don't know what to call that.
Yeah.
Is there another position that we need to look at having?
Not at this time. We're gonna play this out, and we'll see if there's any recommendations to move forward with anything, but not with this study, or there's none of that coming down the pipe.
And there's a public works lead. And then the water, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So
and they kind of
Gary's-
fall into that mid-level management.
in Gary's absence, then Randy is the lead, and
Correct.
he's the lead now. So he would then kind of step in.
Yeah.
A good question. Yeah, I don't think we're big enough right now to add that second in command kind of thing. So, okay.
And other than that, there's just some data worksheets that have been attached to this item for review, but it appears everybody's reviewed them. So
Yep.
that's all I have.
Okay. So next is our street infrastructure project and discussion. I think this will take a little longer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. Quick introduction, just to refresh everyone's memory. At the last city council meeting, the council had a good discussion about looking at bonding for 2023 projects and instead of 2024, and directed WSB to prepare a proposal to move forward with those projects. After we stepped away from the meeting and I was meeting with staff, we started looking at, what are there other streets in these neighborhoods that council may want to consider including with a bonding project in 2023. And so before you, at the work session here and then later on in the regular council meeting, we pulled together a proposal that includes what council directed at the last council meeting, and then some other options for consideration. So we certainly, when we were pulling this together, we realized that this is a lot larger than what council was originally discussing, and so it's been set up kind of a la carte, if you will. If council wants to look at certain project areas or sub-project areas to look at, we've included estimated budgets, and that's for construction and engineering and contingencies. So other indirect costs. So that would be what we would recommend for budget numbers. And we went through and in the proposal, tried to pull together everything that the council is looking at. You requested to have year built. We included PCIs, anything that would provide council a good indication of how old these streets are, what their surface condition is. We do have some chlorines in some of the areas, but others we don't. And so we pulled that all together in the packet tonight. So I think one of the things as we move through the discussions from a staff level is looking at what bonding number the council would be comfortable with. We've included some recommendations from staff discussions for council to consider as far as what staff priorities would be or recommendations would be. And I think with that, I know it was a lot of information. I can certainly go through each project area if council would like. Otherwise, Mayor, I'm looking at you want me to walk through.
Well, so first of all, I guess I'm kind of wondering where we should start because there's a lot of questions I'm sure that we all have. And I was talking to Jasper earlier and I was thinking, when you do a project, it's kind of good if you have a budget in mind. So I'm kind of wondering if we want to look at the numbers for bonding, if that might be, and then that way we can back into the projects. We can adjust it too. But, for instance, if we say, no, we're not willing to go above $6 million, that's it, that's the top of the line, then we know what we can or cannot do. If we say, well, we want to be between the 7 and 8, that kind of thing. So why don't we talk about where we want the budget to be first, and then let's get to the roads. Does that sound like a plan? One of the things that I would need to know, what do we have currently or what do we expect to have next year in the road budget or in the road fund without the bonding? Let's just say without the bonding, because then we can add those two together.
That would let me look it up here, Mayor.
Do we have an idea what we're going to have left over from this year, plus maybe an anticipated amount that we might levy for next year? So we're currently levying $850, right?
$875.
$875.
Yep.
Were we anticipating going to $1 million?
Yeah,
I think we were talking about that, but
23.
again, keep in mind that's then another 3%. So,
Right.
So if we go to $1 million, let's just say, and we have
Well, it's whether you bond for it or you levy for the $1 million. The bonding falls a little bit later than it'll be the next year.
right. Okay, that's good. So roughly, let's just say roughly we're going to bond $1 million, roughly. Levy. Yeah, I'm sorry. And then what do we anticipate having left over in the road fund for this year? Because we're not doing any mill and overlays, right?
Yeah, we are.
We are.
Well, we are.
Yeah.
We'll be bringing that. We haven't had the bid opening yet. We'll be bringing that to the next meeting.
Okay.
Sunnybrook.
Sunnybrook, okay.
Sunnybrook Lane
At the-
and Circle, I believe, are the two.
Per our 2022.
Circle and Sunnybrook Drive. Is that what we're doing?
For the overlay. it was
For the
there.
overlay?
Yeah, there were two Sunnybrooks. I don't remember.
Yeah, it's
the names.
Sunnybrook
Names.
Circle and Sunnybrook Drive, I think. So,
Lane and Drive.
yeah, okay.
So per our original, our 2022 budget, it looks like we had a projected ending fund balance of just shy of $500,000 in the road fund.
At the end of this year. So we should then have approximately 1.5.
If the council does $1 million. levy.
Yeah, okay. I just want to kind of get some frame. Okay, all right. So with that, I think that helps us frame up this.
If we bond in 2023, when is the first payment due?
Usually 2024. It might be, and sometimes they'll even do like a half year or something or phase it in. And we have some flexibility to do. Obviously, that changes the out years and stuff a little bit.
So they're not the anniversary date of the actual bond? Is it January or July?
Usually they're February, August
Oh, February. Okay.
payments that we do some annual payments, one principal and interest and the other just interest.
Irregardless of when you
Pretty much, yeah, that's how they try to structure the bond pay dates. That's how Allers has worked with. Just it times in with when we get our tax collections in June and December.
Right.
We pretty much have the money levied a couple months before, or collected from the levy a couple months before.
Okay. So, Brian, what would I think my bigger concern is what would be the levy increase in even not only in 23, but then also 24 and maybe beyond, and how can we kind of smooth that out a little bit? Because we just talked about, a 3.5-4% increase just in the general for admin. So can we juggle things around? I mean, what can we do to kind of smooth that out a little bit? Because here we're looking at 7, 8, 9% increases, and I think that's going to be a big pill to swallow.
I mean, the biggest way I can see juggling is obviously you take some of that cash levy as we go on the roads fund and apply that to some of the, I think Councilmember Refkin
Right.
mentioned that, so maybe we're at 875 as a base right now. I mean, if the levy impact for doing,
Right.
I have that sheet in front of me, if it's a $600,000-$700,000 a year, levy impact, you'd shift the majority of that to debt for a while and then just have a couple $100,000 left over each year to do some minor overlays, but pretty much what we've built up to in the cash levy, you dedicate more of that
to the debt levy, right? Right. But
that's
keep
the best way,
right,
or the one that's right in our face, I think, or whatever.
And we can do that for a while, but unless you levy for $16 million, it doesn't cover all of the roads that need to be fixed. So there's the catch out there too. Yeah. So I think you have to look at that as well. So and maybe I don't know. Maybe you do some now, and then 3 or 4 years later, or 5 years later, you do another significant bond, or something like that. But
well, that was kind of a question I got, where the analysis here was a lot of reconstructs or reclamations, obviously big ticket items. In the meanwhile, if we're not doing mill and overlays, we talked about this multi-times.
Right.
We go 2-3 years, now those mill and overlays didn't get done. Now we got some more reconstructs or reclamations.
Right.
So it's the devil's advocate, pay me now or pay me later. We don't have, Brian, we don't have any significant service debt dropping off.
No, I think the auditors, that report showed us we just don't have anything in the next 5 to 10 years of any real substance dropping off.
Well, we have equipment certificates dropping off.
Yeah.
But I mean, adding them together, it's several hundred thousands. Don't we have like an 85,000 one dropping off? Either
we've only got, I think, 2 equipment
two
certificates left, so it's not really that big an impact. It's probably
still
up to 100,000.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But maybe a little more. But and then when does Game Farm come off? 28?
2030, I think. It was
Is
a
it
20-year
2030?
bond in 2010, so 2030, that's probably our next biggest one coming off. So
Okay.
it's 8 years out. Yeah.
Okay.
I was curious on the recommendation. Looked like the recommendation was kind of to split this into 2 groups. So this year, if I read it correctly, for 2023, we talked about maybe A, B, C1, and D. Those add up to 9.8 million alone. That leaves another 6.5. Was that, I guess, how was that arrived at? Were those deemed to be greater needs than the others? Or was part of it to keep under 10 million bonding because of the premium of a 0.5 point? Was that part of it as well? Or was it just accidental?
No, I think there was, to me it was to always look at to try to split it, whether we're in that $8-9 million range. It allows us to hopefully plan and do the highest priorities now and then in a couple of years come back. But then it also does save us on the interest end of not having to go for taxable bonds versus tax exempt with the $10 million exemption.
Our is 10 million, is that tax exempt then?
That's our allowance each year, however you want to say that. You can go up to 10 million for tax exempt bonds in a given calendar year.
If I may, if we do bond for the water infrastructure project, so like the wells, and that also goes against our tax exempt. So we're going for PFA, right? PFA loans on that, which we'll have to do a tax exempt status. So that'll affect the PFA loan. It might go from I don't even know what they're at, 1.2%. It might go to 1.3. So it'll have some impact, but not nearly as much as like if we would sell a
But will it have
bond.
an impact on the PFA loan? Because that's through the state.
It did.
Okay,
Yeah,
so it still does?
I talked to Todd Hagan and
Okay.
others, and they're working with a similar client on a project, and he said they were looking at, PFA rates have trickled up too,
Right.
so it's
A
like
little bit,
3%, and like taxable would be like 3.3, so you're talking about a 0.25% or so.
Okay.
0.3%, so.
As far as interest goes, at what point does it get locked in?
Oh, it's on the date of the sale, usually, or the date of the closing of the bonds or whatever, so.
So you can't lock in ahead of time. Like mortgage rates, you can lock in for 30 days or whatever. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's, well, different. And there may be, depending on how this shakes out, there may be ways to you bond at the end of one year versus the beginning of another, like 22 to 3 or 23 to 24. Some of it's going to be how ready we are to bond and how close we are with engineering
but the 10 million is per year.
yeah, pretty
So,
yeah.
so that's why you're saying if we could do a
So
bond in
December of 22 and then
and then do
February of
February
23 or
of-
whatever.
yeah.
So it would be a different. Yeah, it would reset that. Yeah. So.
Okay. So we have to keep that in mind. Because we are going to have to bond for the water infrastructure.
Oh,
We
right,
know
right,
that.
Right.
Yeah.
So are we thinking that's
And-
2024?
But here's the thing. The water infrastructure bond is going to be more than 10 million. I can almost guarantee you it's going to be more than 10 million.
I'm thinking off the top of my head, I think the number we were looking at was around 11 million. Is that what when we were talking, Brian?
I think we had plugged in like for the wall. Yeah, probably about that 10, 11 million.
So
Like-
what I'm getting at is that's already going to be over 10 million anyway. And we're going to
Yeah.
bond for that in 1 year, right?
Yeah, I mean, maybe you'd bond up to 10, and I don't know how, whether you do depending on how much the difference is, whether you have some available fund balance or
Yeah,
whether you do
okay.
a taxable bond for the other $1 million. Yeah, and it's,
Okay.
there's different ways you could do
Okay.
it. 'Cause I guess you can have the exemption up to 10 and then just split the rest, whatever's over by another, if it's
Okay.
$1 million or $2 million, then you could do a taxable bond for the rest.
Okay. All right.
So a couple more pieces just to throw in and mix the pot up.
Good. Go ahead.
The odds are we can't use MSA funds or won't be able to use MSA funds
For
on
North Arm.
these roads.
Not in
The
North
ones
Arm.
that are applicable. North Arm.
North
and,
Arm is the only one. Hunter's Trail, we
Hunter's-
probably can.
Right. That'd be the only.
Yeah, I don't anticipate any design issues with Hunter's Trail. It's new enough. It's flat, and there's options to advance funds out of state aid as well. So if you say, for example, I think all of Hunter's Trail comes to 1.5 million, just to throw a number out. If we currently have over 500,000 in the state aid fund, and we anticipate another 300,000 next year, we can request an advance on this construction fund. I don't know that there's a cap on it. They certainly have a lot of requests, so I don't know that we would make up the full gap, but there is that option to advance state aid funds.
An advance on 2024 or an advance on getting the funds prior to submitting bills?
It's the order of operations that I would recommend to the city is, and this would be subject to make sure that the state aid office is okay with that, is if the city council wants to look at advancing funds, we go to state aid and say we would like to advance funds and get authorization for that. I don't know how much of the plans would have to be done at that point, but we could certainly get the name and number in the hopper.
So Allison, do we know it? Do you know approximately what it would cost for Hunter's Trail?
I do.
Do you have a
Just grab
number?
that here. So, Hunter's Trail, as you can see in the packet, we looked at it in two areas. The north area, which is the one that is in worse condition and was a replacement, that was just under 700,000, and then the remainder is at 1.17 million. That's what I had in the spreadsheet.
For the total or for the remainder? That seems like a lot for the remainder. Because that's just a mill and overlay.
I can double check those numbers. That's what I was looking at today when I was. Bear with me.
So that's the only one that we could use today. I mean, we can do more of Sunnyfield or more of that, but North Arm we can't use it because the impacts would be too great because of the standards we'd have to meet. So North Arm is going to come off. We could see what other streets we could put on in lieu of North Arm.
Madam Mayor, you're correct. The 1.17 is total.
Yeah.
Thank
okay.
you.
That sounds more like
Yep.
it. Okay. And we have 800,000, so we'd have to set 700,000. So that's basically. I thought we had more than 300,000 coming every year. I thought it was like
363.
63.
And that's what I've been budgeting when
Okay.
looking at the fund balance.
So basically, it'd be 2 years advancement.
In
Correct.
theory, at the end of
In theory.
2023, or in 2023,
Right.
we have almost 900,000,
Yeah.
898.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we would be looking at a $400,000 advance, a
Mhm.
1 year advance on the
Okay.
construction fund.
All right. So, council, where?
The second thing,
Yeah, okay.
assessments.
Okay, we need to talk about those too. Yes, because there are some assessments that are just off the charts.
Right, so
we
then-
just can't do that.
Then the discussion needs to be, now do we modify our assessments policy to put in a limit or some type of legally identifying when there are times that we won't or can't use the normal 50%.
Yeah, and I've talked to Jasper about this because the assessments on some of these projects are just way too high.
Right.
So the most assessment that we've ever done was on Halsted, and that was for 14,500.
Yeah, so I was just shy of
Yeah.
14,800 or whatever.
And that was going from a gravel road to a paved road, and that makes a huge difference.
Right.
Here, none of these roads are going from gravel to paved. They're all paved. They're going from bad paved to good paved. So the delta between that in terms of benefit is not going to be as great as gravel to. So when we look at, I did some of the numbers here, and for instance, Kings Point Road would come in at around $23,000, $23,541 actually, per parcel, and that's if we include the state parcel, which Allison was telling me we may not be able to do. So we're talking somewhere around, and then also Morning View and Eastview, they would be coming in at around 24,000. So I think we have to take a look. We don't necessarily have to change our policy, but when we're going to have to deviate from it, and or go and change the policy.
Well, and my concern is if certainly we can vote to say on this one project we're doing something different, but if you don't somehow put that into the policy, next year or 2 years from now you go down this road again, and
Right.
other than the memory of what we did 2 years ago, if the policy doesn't somehow not legally, but somehow, for me anyway,
Right.
kind of identify when there will be exceptions and
That might be, yeah. Okay. That would have to be a policy decision, and I think tonight, if the council can agree to maybe look at that or discuss that closer, we can, and I think we should. And the other thing that we have to look at is, I mean, I don't know that we can tonight say this is our cap,
Right.
but I can pretty much tell you we'd have a room full of people screaming and hollering at us if we imposed $23,000 street improvements. So I think we need to definitely look at that.
You just want to be careful as far as, even our previous discussion, things go up market over time, and you don't want to just put on an arbitrary cap that, because 5
Right.
years ago we said 15,000, that, that's in today's
Right.
dollars versus tomorrow's dollars versus, and what if there's I don't know, would that apply to I'm trying to think what other, Three Rivers Park District or just other entities and stars as far as that, or maybe different type of parcels you wouldn't want to limit yourself, or you want to categorize things.
Right. Good point.
And we don't have any different categories for assessing, so we could create something too. And so we'll have to look at that. Are you in agreement, everyone?
Yeah, we're,
Yes.
we're in agreement. I'm trying to wrap my head around. We know we have to bond for water, right? And that's a have to, because we have to do those projects. We know we want to do more roads than we're really able to do, so we have to bond for that as well, right? And then how does that, again, back to those magic formulas for the levies, how does that actually raise taxes for everybody, and by how much?
Well, I think
The levy goes up a percentage point for every $50,000.
Thank you.
yeah, and Jasper had sent out that sheet, I think, or that it showed that even the $6 to $12 million range. I mean, it's big levy impact. It's 600, 700, 800,000 and up. So you divide that, that 50,000.
But that's why what Kathleen was saying too. What you do is, so we've been levying 875,000 this year. Maybe we levy $1 million next year. What we do is we use, so that's a 3% increase, right? So we use maybe 30% or 50% of that money to pay the bond, still leaving us some money to do more roads, but using some of that for the bond payment.
Might have to be the inverse, almost like a 70-30 versus a 30.
Whatever,
I know what you're saying.
Right.
More towards debt.
But we also then have to understand we're not going to have as much money to do projects on an annual basis.
The more we lower the assessment, the more the city has to pay. So we can make all the exceptions we want, but the residents are going to pay. Either the levy's going to go up, or it's going to be tacked onto your tax bill. I mean,
But
either way, the residents are going to pay for the roads.
Right, but there's
That
also
means-
the legal aspect of it, and we don't want to put the city. So what happens when you have an assessment appealed, and they win their appeal, it can be. And so let's just say you had 10 people on North Arm come and say, we're not paying $23,000, it's not worth it, and they appeal it, and they do a group appeal, and they win. There's 10 assessments that we're not getting at all. So we have to be careful about that, because the city can only assess what the benefit is. And so we have to determine what that benefit is. And we can do a study. Allison told me about the study you can do to determine what the market or what legal options we might have for that cap, if you will. We might want to do that. Might want to consider doing that.
Would you like me to provide a brief explanation? So in this instance, it's a evaluation report, which you get there's individuals that are trained and certified to do this work. And they go and they take a look at comparable properties in other communities that had similar projects done before and after. So they look at sales before and after street improvement project in this instance. And they look at what the market value increase was of a similar property before the improvement done versus after, and in various situations, and they come up with that's the benefit. And it's typically a range, and that provides council some direction as far as what assessments you should lie within that range. Your assessment should lie within that range.
How does that work in the home market is through the roof right now?
That's up for that's a great question, and that's the
question. I didn't hear that. How does that work with the home market through the roof right now?
And certainly when there's anomalies like that, we would ask them to provide their recommendation, because if they are seeing those blips in, they might, instead of looking at 2020, just as an example, I don't know if they're doing this, instead of looking at 2022 sales, they're looking at 2020 or something before, where they feel, and maybe inflating it a little bit, but that would certainly be something we'd ask them to correct for.
Yeah, because obviously you wouldn't know if it's market inflation or whether it was a road project.
Yeah. No, that's a good question.
Yeah. If I may, they have a way of isolating that market data out from the actual driver for the increase related to the road. So you can just look at a home that didn't have a road in front of it in 2022 and a road that didn't have a home in it, let's say in 2021. See what the value increase was there, and then add the road in there. And they do all these calculations, and you can figure that out. You can just basically take out the value added from the kind of insane market we have right now. So.
Yeah. So that might be something we might want to consider doing before we.
I would think that'd be really important to have.
Yeah.
If I may, so I've previous place where I worked, we went from a kind of a static, stringent assessment policy to doing benefit appraisal or valuations. One thing that will happen, I'll just let you know, you will shift the cost burden from the localized home to the general
right.
general public of
Kathleen
your community.
Right.
We went from in general, we look at what percentage of the project costs were being covered by before the valuation and then with the valuation, and we went from before 35% ish of the project down to 20. So it went down significantly. So that shifted to the just general tax levy. So that's what will likely happen in this situation, which, and there's a legal component of it, and the legal component doesn't necessarily match up with what the valuation increases are, or the cost increases that we're seeing for construction, right? Because construction costs are going up faster than the values for the homes that are related to the construction work. So that's the biggest piece that's missing, right? They're not going up together. It's hard to have a legal argument that 50% or 40% or some other communities have 30%, whatever that is. It's hard to justify that now with just the kind of crazy market that we're dealing with.
The other thing to keep in mind is if we, regardless of what the assessment is, whether it's 20% or 30 or whatever, it's more the dollars that are important, but we're not going to get those assessments all at once. We're going to get some of them all at once, but not all of them. So I think with the assessments that we've been doing, we've been getting about 40%. I think right off the bat,
40%, and then the rest pay over time.
So then we can use those funds to help pay down make the bond payments. But
and when they run the bond or do the bond, they usually run some of those projections and have that actuarial type stuff on your information,
right.
Trend information. So.
And these benefit appraisals or valuation reports generally cost, for like a normal size project, $15,000 to $20,000. So there's a cost to them added to the project, but so keep that into consideration as well. There's only a couple firms in Minnesota that do them too, so it's kind of a very limited market. We have to let them know well in advance that we need to have their services. Otherwise, there's a very good chance you won't get it in time to follow the Chapter 429 process, and so it's important.
Well, we'll have to look at different options. Different things. All right. Any other questions, comments? All right. So back to the budget. Where do you kind of want to fall in? Where's your comfort level? 6,000, 6 million, 7 million?
So we jumped to 6 million. Why did we start at 6 million? Why didn't we start at 4?
Projects.
The project, the base.
I understand that.
Yep, the base level project that we have here for just Morning View is 5.26. So we just started at 6 million just to do that plan, because that was the planned project for 2023 was the Morning View neighborhood. So that's why it started at 6.
4.1 Morning View.
Oh, for the levy total project cost, which would be what we bond for, would be 5.26. So that's why I started at 6 and not 5 or 4. But I could easily figure those out. Mm-hmm. The impacts or the differences between the interest rates, or
because starting where we're at right now and what we were going to do for the year with getting it up to $1 million and jumping to 6 million sounds overwhelming. Right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So to make it less overwhelming, you pull things apart. How do we pull it apart and get it down?
Well, as Jasper said, we need nearly $6 million just to do the Eastview, Morningview one.
So I pulled together.
It doesn't jive with the assessments. This isn't all jiving together.
So I pulled, Christopher, because he's better with Excel than I am, he pulled together a spreadsheet for me. Just based on a $10 million bond, assuming the payment's around $755, based on Jasper's spreadsheet. If we levy for the $1 million and we don't owe a payment in 2024, we obviously bond for it for 2023 projects, but we don't spend any of our money in 2023 because we're bonding for it, so we don't have payment. So we start with $1 million in our fund. And then let's say we continue to bond for $1 million for 2024, and then we spend $750. We pay all the bond payment from what we're levying for the foreseeable future, and yet we're still building on that $1 million for other jobs. And then if we increase the levy or the levy amount to 1.15 million, so another 150, then you just keep adding to your reserve as you keep using most of your levy for the payment. That's how I figured it out. And then we still have money to do mill and overlays and other ongoing maintenance projects, but continue to use the levy amount for the payment.
Basically dedicate 3/4 right after the
Yeah,
bat,
just
so
dedicate
roughly
the
or
money
something.
to it,
And
with
then
a gradual increase to how much we're levying for the roads.
it gets to be less of a percentage back to.
Well, you would increase your levy, your road levy every year by, let's say, 2 or 3, like we've been doing.
Yeah.
So,
That's exactly right. I think Brian and I had the kind of idea, well, not our idea, but you have the flexibility to use the pools of money or the pots of money that you've already established in the budget to lessen the effect of this. The one thing I do want to make sure that's evident is that that $1 million levy that street fund that we have right now, I mean, it's not going to go away. Like doing these projects, we're still going to have a lot of mill and overlay projects we got to keep up on, so they don't turn into full depth reclamation. So it's important. I think it's a kind of a short term. Use that fund, but then you also have to keep in mind you got to continue to build that back up to the levels that it was at. So you're kind of using it to dampen the effect of the levy, and then have a plan in the next 5 to 10 years to keep building that up, because it's never going to go away.
No, but if you increase it like we have, 2-3% every year, pretty soon you're levying, $2 million versus $1 million, even though you're using $700,000 of it to pay off. I mean, right now, I guess what I'm looking at is I want to make sure that we get these roads mill and overlaid right now, so that they don't turn into immediately or in the nearer future turn into a total reconstruct. And then also let's look at the roads that need to be reconstructed and see how many we can do. And if it's...
And you're saying the minimum is $6 million.
The minimum, well, we have to, in order just to do Eastview and Morningview next year, we're looking at $5 million.
And do we have to do those two next year?
Well, the utilities, Gary will tell you.
That would be my first recommendation, would be that area. I mean, just in the last 20 years, there's been 10 water main breaks in that area. Since I've been here 10 years, we've had 4 alone in the area. So, I mean, and not to mention, if you look at what the runoff that is actually coming, because the roads are deteriorating. So every rainfall you get, and there's plenty of hills in that area, so you're washing that sediment into the lake. So everything's going through there. If you look after a good rainfall, I mean, if we had our own sweeper, we could sweep that almost after every rainfall. There's so much sediment that's ending up going into the lake too, which is not very good. So, and then there's also what our patching costs are every year. Would come in there and put a Band-Aid on cancer, as I call it. I mean, you're just scab patching in there. So, I mean, there's a lot of cost and expense in that too. So that would definitely be my first recommendation. I mean, it's that water main alone is pushing 50 years old. You got your money's worth out of it. It's, ductile iron. All the sewers are been lined in there. So, I mean, they're all, been redone. But it's the water main you got to start looking at as the big culprit. You don't want to just go in and, do a project, do the road, and not do the water main underneath, because you're going to end up with problems down the road. So it's a big ticket item, but that would definitely be my number one right there.
big mill and overlays that are on this list?
The big ones are North Arm and Turtle Creek.
Turtle Creek and Hunter's Crest are the big mill and overlay areas. And then we've got, I mean, we have a little bit of time before we start seeing Woodland Cove start coming in for a time frame for mill and overlay, because I think the first streets were 2014, 2015 era. So that's what we were looking at for mill and overlay. And Hunter's Crest, we have, so in the budget numbers for Hunter's Crest, the majority of those roads we said based on PCI and looking at, they're at or maybe a little bit over the recommended age for mill and overlay, we'd certainly want to get Corings to verify that that's the correct maintenance activity.
If you remember the pavement management plan, how that works is you have on your new roads 100. As you start to deteriorate, you do your crack fill. You do. We're going to be looking now at the newer roads, of course, going back to seal coat maybe. But get to that point, and you get to the point as you're dropping, do a mill and overlay in that 12 to 15 year point. Bring yourself up. You're not going to be at 100% again. Be darn close to it, but then you start coming down again. So take a lot of these roads that we're looking at, like Hunter's Crest, we should be on our second mill and overlay already, not our first. I mean, the first phase is 2001. So that's 21 years old already. I mean, you should be looking already ahead at your second one. So same with like Turtle Creek. You have Painter's Creek Edition up there, FO110. You also have, which is getting up there, but you also have Trillium Bay, which is 1994. It's never had anything done to it. So, I mean, there's a lot of other roads too that, should be looking at their second one, and we're not even on number one yet. So it's going to play a factor into the future, how we plan this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So maybe, Allison, can you clarify here? So in our packet, this is in our regular meeting packet, I think, it lists on page 104, if you look that up, Hunter's Crest, mill and overlay and full depth removal, reconstruct, 1.9 and 2.8 basically. Break that out. How much? So are you saying that is including Hunter's Trail?
I'm just getting cut up.
Or is the 1.7 for Hunter's Trail included in that?
That's everything that was covered, clear, right? So that's everything here.
So for section E, that's what you're asking? So the 1.9 was for the that north section.
But that includes like Gander Lane and Partridge.
That's all the orange and red, right?
Correct.
Yeah. And then the 2 is for all the purple?
No, the cutoff point was approximately the park, correct, Gary?
Correct. That's where phase one stopped, or that was the end of phase one at that time.
Okay, but again, these numbers, the total of 4.6 or almost 4.7, does that include the 1.7 for Hunter's Trail?
That's a great question. It included Hunter's Trail.
Okay.
Correct. Yes.
So we could back 1.7 out of that.
Yep.
Okay. So basically, it's down to 3 million. Okay. Can we add any other roads that we wanted to MSA? You know what? Why doesn't Morning View? No, seriously. Why doesn't Morning View qualify as an MSA? It connects County Road 110 and County Road 110.
We can look at that. I'm just going to pull up a map here because I'm concerned that it wouldn't meet state aid design requirements because of some of the curves.
Yeah, because of the
ECU,
curves. Okay.
Especially when you come around to the ECU side, it would not with the slope of the hill.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Gary and I have. It's been a while since we sat down, and Jasper too. We took a look. We're like, where can we do state aid routes, and we don't have a good candidate to allocate at this time.
Is there any way to do part of North Arm without the elevation?
No, they won't let us do that. That's the problem.
They won't?
We've talked about that on other roads. And once you start a project, they want you to eventually finish it under state aid standards. See, that we ran into that problem on Game Farm Road. Because we said, well, couldn't we just do this section and then stop? And then, who knows, down the road do more? But they said, no, once you start a road with state aid funding, you have to finish it according to their standards. Allison, am I correct on that?
I believe that's correct. They want to take a look at that whole that whole route in its entirety, and when
Right.
you would have a plan to complete that. It would be a different story if you were looking at a really, really long segment that was, let's say you had an east-west segment and you had a really logical section where you had like a county road that bisected it. Then it would you could probably make a better argument, but I think with North Arm we would have a difficult time with that.
All right, so back to how much you want to bond for.
So we're back to not having much of a choice. We're at $6 million.
Well, that minimum was $6 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the bonding for water? What are we looking at for that?
They were saying 10, 11.
10 million. 10 to 11.
But that would come out of the water fund.
Mhm.
I mean,
But still, that's
Yeah.
part of the
Yep.
10, you can only do 10 million a year.
no, we can do more. We just
pay the premium.
Yeah, you have to pay a premium because of the tax exempt bonds or non-tax exempt bonds. So if we stay under 10 million, but that's what we were saying is if we bond, so it's 10 million a year. So if we bond in, let's say December of 22 for 10 million for roads, we can still bond 10 million in 23 for the water infrastructure. And then we have to look at, well, maybe, we also have to look at the timing for the PFA loan. There's
Correct.
a timing issue with the PFA loan, so I don't know when.
Yeah, 'cause
Isn't
we
that
just-
in April?
Well, I want to say like in September, we're on the list now or whatever. We applied for the PPL and the IUP
Okay.
list. So I think it's fall when we find out if we qualified.
I thought it was September
Yeah, September. I was
sometime.
going to say fall. Yeah, September. So.
And
Yeah.
then you have to bond. Then you have to bond or apply for it when.
I'd have to refresh myself. But first, we got to figure out if we qualify in September. I guess.
Okay.
If we make the cut or so.
What does that mean?
They a lot of times assign points to different projects in different cities based on their ability to pay and what the project's for. Water treatment plants are two other ones qualified for PFA, so it should in this case hopefully qualify because I think it has to do with treatment of the water versus storage. You know, our water tower didn't qualify.
It has to do with whether or not you need it for water quality or water quantity versus expansion. So that might be kind of a kicker.
Yeah, so
we have to
it's
see.
not 100% that
Yeah.
will get it, or whatever. So maybe just to give some context as far as our overall debt, outstanding debt right now, we have about 18 million. I think if everyone remembers from the audit presentation, and about 11 million is utility, water mainly driven, and the other 7 million. So we're obviously talking some decent numbers here as far as
So-
where we're at right now versus.
So what is, have you talked to Ellers about when you bond, there's a point at which you kind of lose your rating or maybe you don't get as favorable a rating? So in other words, if you have more than 25% of your general fund is debt, what's a good percentage of your general fund to have for debt?
Of the overall levy, you mean, as far as what percent, like we're at? Like right
Right.
now, we have about 800,000 of our overall levy of about 5.3 million. So that would be right now. I think our debt levy to overall levy is like 15-20%, or whatever.
Okay,
so the rest of it's for operations, basically non-debt.
But is that, so what I'm saying is that a good number? Because, and then if we take out, 10 million, whatever, how does that affect our bond rating?
It shouldn't up to a certain extent. I mean, as long as they look at the ability to pay and that type of thing. And obviously, I think our debt, when I compare to some of our neighbors, I mean, there's other cities that have a lot more debt per capita issue
Right.
than we do, as far as I know, Mound does. I mean, I think when I looked at Shorewood was pretty similar to us, and so it just depends on the individual city. But I haven't heard too many cities, as long as you're making the bond payments and have the ability to pay, they usually won't downgrade from our
Okay.
AA+ to AA or anything like that. So
Okay. All right.
we're going to try and get infrastructure money for some of this, assuming our legislature does anything?
Definitely. I mean, we're looking at it, right? We're looking at the options to get some of this, grant money from the feds and the state. The framework for how you even access it isn't even available. And generally speaking, some of these they make it almost impossible to get access to it. So we're looking at it, and if there's a way, we'll get it figured out.
I think the council is good in that there's been some really good discussions for some of these high price ticket items to go and package it up and look at to show that there's been a long discussion about it and give the history indicates that the council's been looking at doing this independent of the grant money. I think that weighs well with the city.
Okay.
The only other comment I probably would make on and this is coming from the finance guy, so take it with a grain of salt. No, I'm kidding. But I think doing it over in a couple of chunks, like maybe 6 to 9 million now and 6 to 9 million later, is better for two reasons. Obviously, one, financially, and two, even just logistically. I mean, I'd hate to see us take on trying to do three, four projects might be good versus trying to do 7 or 8. And then you got your resources too scattered around the city. You got contracts that are hanging out there. I've seen it happen before. If you overextend yourself a little bit. I guess I wouldn't recommend doing the whole 16 million now. I would say split it in half or something, or 6, 7, 8 million, 9 maybe max. So.
Right. No, that was my question too. Are we really going to have the resources, not just financial resources, but the resources to do a huge? I mean, some of these, it's a list. I mean, a long list. So I think we have to look at that too. So getting back, how much do we? So finance is saying 6 to 9, kind of in that range. Finance guru over there.
Gary's probably mad at me right now, right?
Well, I mean, no matter what we do,
it's better than what. Yeah, I mean, it's advanced. We are in dire need. I mean, there's so many roads. I mean, it's.
So if I look at this, I'm looking at. So I'm looking at like 8 million. Maybe between 8 and 9.
Great minds.
What?
Great minds.
What did you say?
I said 9.
Okay. And again, when you look at the payment, again, if 582, that leaves about half of what we're levying for doing other projects. But we can't do any huge projects. But okay. So let's do this. Let's kind of look at between 8 and 9. Okay. John?
Yeah.
Do you want another number?
No.
Okay.
I swallow hard every time I look at this. So.
Pam?
I do agree with Brian with splitting it up. Just the fact of having so much action going on too. I think we've tried things like that before. So I agree with that. I don't know about the number, but.
Okay. And where do you feel comfortable at?
Yeah, well, I trust the calculations I'm looking at right here. And it looks like 9 would be the number, but it does seem overwhelming.
It does, yeah. Well, let's kind of keep that in the back of our minds. And then let's move on to deciding maybe which roads need to be done. And that might also then, we know, so based on staff's recommendation, they're saying number 1 would be the Eastview, Morning View 1, and we know what that is going to cost, or estimated at the total cost of 5. But now utility budget, are we bonding for that too?
Yes, that's one of the reasons that the water utility rate study is sort of following this is because until we decide on some of this would be another $1 million to bond for roughly
But
water
wouldn't we,
dollars.
okay, but wouldn't we bond for that when we bond for the treatment plants or not? Would this be separate?
I think this would be part of. Well, it'll be interesting. I mean, well, we might have a 2023A bond and a B bond, or a 2022. But I think you'd probably include it with the street projects. It would just be paid for with utility revenues, water in this case. Which you can have that all the time, where there's different revenue streams for a bond, so a bond. It doesn't have to just be tax levy.
Yeah, but how would you separate it, though?
It'd be all delineated out in the closing book or the documents or whatever, as far as how much would come from utility revenues versus how much would come from tax levy.
Okay.
The financing sources, yep.
Okay, so we're looking at 5.2, 5.3 for that. Kings Point Road, and I know there's people here that are interested in this one. So I think staff was saying Eastview, Kings Point, North Arm, and possibly Turtle Creek. What did that all come to? I didn't do those numbers.
9.8.
That's 9.8. So probably should shave a little off of that. Council?
Well, is it better to do the north end of Kings Point or do all of the Painter area with the mill and overlays and the Turtle Creek mill and overlays so it lasts longer?
Because we're doing that, Sunnybrook was on our list, but we're doing that this year, so that should come off our list, right?
That's Sunnybrook Circle.
Yeah.
That's the other one that's got drainage issues that need to be addressed. And
Okay.
Yeah, that was a little more in. The reason it wasn't included in this year's overlay project is because, as Gary mentioned, it has drainage issues, and it would have taken more preparation to get that bid package together because there's more engineering to it. So it wasn't included for 2022.
Okay. So what were you saying, putting that back in?
Setting it up now.
Oh, to put that one.
Painter was 420, Painter Creek.
If we do
Development.
Eastview, so A, C1, C2, C3, C4, and D, it's 9.4. So if we do A, C1, C2, C3, C4, we're under the 9. And that leaves B, D, and E for a later bond.
Okay, so A, Morning View.
All of C. And that keeps us under 9.
Well, the only thing I would say is Kings Point Road, we have had a request to do that. And North Arm, we've had requests to do that. So I think we should.
North Arm's included.
Yep.
All of C is south.
There are some that are accessible too, right? So that would bring the amount down a little bit.
Yeah, some of them are. Eastview, Morning View.
I wouldn't even really.
But we have to
consider
bond
that.
for the whole.
Yeah.
We have to bond for all of it. That's the thing. So you're not. We don't know how fast people are going to pay. I had done some numbers too, and came up with 7.2. But that I just added the street budget, not the utility budget. So if you add the street budget only, not the utility budget, and you do Eastview, Kings Point, Turtle Creek, and North Arm, that's 7.7. If you don't add the utility portion of it.
But we have to add the utility portion of it.
Yeah.
So
It's a different revenue stream, but I still would, when you're looking at just financing, I would look at it as an overall project cost.
Well, that kind of brings us, though, to the nearly $1 million for the Kings Point Road utilities. I don't think, is that really, I don't think we should do it, quite frankly. I think if the people on Kings Point Road, if the majority want it and the majority will hook up, maybe then they pay for it. Or the city puts the water in and then they pay for the hookup fees or an area charge. But I think you'd have a hard... So if you do the numbers, they'd have to be assessed around $31,000 just for the water. And that would be a hard sell when people have their own wells and have their own systems and don't want to hook up. I mean, the four of us have our own wells. If somebody said to you, we are going to put this in the ground and you're going to pay for it $31,000, I think you'd have a hard time with that.
Didn't their email say they wanted city water? Though?
Some did. Some do. There are some people that do and some don't.
Well, is it feasible? You can't do some and some. Like, you can't half it, so
No.
it's either all or nothing.
Right. That's why I'm saying you'd have to do a survey or something to find out if the majority want it. And the other thing is, some people might say, well, we want it, but we didn't know it would be $31,000. The $31,000 is just the city's assessment. Then they have to pay a connection fee. Then they have to pay a contractor to bring it into their house. So it's probably going to be closer to $40,000 if they want to hook up to city water, roughly. So, I mean, again, if people are given these numbers, then they might say, yeah, we still want it, or maybe they don't want it.
True. So if 51% say they do, then we do it, even though 49% are mad. I mean,
Well, yeah.
You're going to have people on both sides of it. So
That's right. Well, my recommendation, if the council wants to do it, the city should put the pipe in the water in the ground, and then those that want to hook up have to pay a fee, whether it's a connection charge and or an area charge. But you know, are we going to say to 49% of the people, hey, you have to pay the $31,000?
What do we usually do?
We've never done that before. We've never put pipe in the ground and then force people to pay for it and or hook up.
This one, the hookup.
Yeah, just for the hookup. Yeah, right. Yep. Yeah, and then also when we brought connected the south and the central system, we brought the pipe down Farm Hill and Halstead, and everybody there is allowed to hook up if they want to, but they would have to pay the hookup charge. But they didn't have to pay for the pipe in the ground. That's why I'm saying I think it's a slippery slope to go down to start doing that, if that's what the city wants to do.
And if we don't do that, it keeps us under the 9.
Well,
I don't think we want to do the roads without laying the
Yeah,
pipe.
you have
It's
to lay.
just
If we're going to do the road, we're going to lay the pipe.
Right.
Yeah, I mean.
I think the question then is, do we do the huge assessment or the city lays the pipe? And then we figure out what people pay that want to connect.
I think we need to figure out which roads we want to do first.
Yeah, if I may, I think we're likely trending toward a assessment discussion, which this water component falls under, right? Mm-hmm. And I think right now our policy says 100%. We've never had to utilize that, I think, in the past, other than with new development.
Maple Crest. I can think of one.
Maple Crest, okay. So I think we could have a conversation about the assessment piece, but yeah, I think we can work through that and make it palatable, right? Because $31,000 or whatever it would be is quite an expensive bill to do that. Just knowing that if you don't fund it locally, again, it's going to be socialized across the whole billing network of water. So everybody who has water will pay for that.
And Maple Crest, it went down 151, so all they had to do is connect at 151.
It was like I think it was like an $11,000 assessment. It was more manageable or whatever. It was 8.
Right. Yeah. I think it was less than that even.
So maybe the street was 11 and the water was 8, or it was something like that.
It was. Okay, so that brings us back.
Gary, so we can't do all the roads. Which ones do you want to do?
Honestly, I'd like to see done, of course, the Eastview Northview area. North Arm would be my next candidate because that road is horrible and we spend more time out there. My last opinion, I would say the Painters Creek Edition Turtle, and then do the C4. I mean, it puts you roughly about $8.7 million. That would be our choices. I mean, the problem is a Turtle, if you put that off, we're already looking at full depth removal of the main drag through the Center Island area. That's going to turn into a reclaim soon. If you wait too much longer, because that road is starting to really fall apart through there. the Painters Creek addition off of 110. You got a lot of movement in that road, a lot of settlement. Where right now, mill and overlay through there would be get the crown back in the road, fix the curb that's bad. You know, you're way ahead on that one. So that would be my stuff. You know, you also have the which should be Ridgewood Cove, which is again put in 1973. I mean, that one's has nothing done on it but patches, and there'd be some curb to put in there on the hill. Sandbrook Circle would be nice since we're doing the other two roads in the neighborhood. I'm sure you're going to get questions as to why their road didn't get done, just due to that fact. And then I think the other one I don't have in front of it was the other one for that was Marina. I mean, that one you could or could not do. I mean, it's right up in that area, so it would be one that you could add in or take out. I mean, it's a minimal cost when you're up there. So, but that would be my recommendation. I mean, as far as Kings Point Road goes, it would be nice to get it done, but with the cost of the water main in there, and are we going to see any revenue from that water main for quite a while? I don't know. Right.
Yeah. Well, but on the other hand, too, when you look at it, you're going to have to end up bonding for it then, because it's 1.3, 1.4 million.
Well, we can bond for that when we bond for hunters then.
Are we going to bond for hunters?
Well, we'll have to bond for part of it.
Yeah.
One thing, if I may, with the Hunters Trail too, I mean, one thing to maybe look at to push that out. I mean, a lot of those roads are, the first phase is the worst. I mean, and then the worst of it in there is Hunters Trail. I mean, you could look at doing, a simple 1-inch mill and overlay in there to push that out 5, 6, 7 years.
Is the MSA, and we can use MSA.
Yep. Dollars. I mean, but now you can push the whole rest of it. I mean, because you're already into reclaim and reconstruct on the first phase. It's holding up. It's fine. So I mean, you can push that out then, no problem. The 4 or 5 years, if you had to.
Which one?
All of Hunters. I mean, you could push that out, 3 to 5 years.
If you
with just doing I would not do the whole area. I would just do a simple mill and overlay on the first phase.
Okay.
Part of it from Highway 7 up to the park.
And how much?
That's the worst. And that's about $250,000-$260,000 to take care of that area in there. I'm saying and then you could push that out again. I mean, because the rest of it is pretty decent yet. I mean, they are holding up very well, and they were well-made roads. It's the first phase that's already into the actually a reconstruct. It'd be the Gander lanes that are the worst. So, I mean, you can move stuff around and kind of push things out and make it work.
Okay.
So I added up all of C and D, and it's 9.4 million. According to Jasper's calculator, that makes the yearly payment go up. And this is only used very lightly, only $30,000. Again, only is used very, very lightly in that statement. And that would be my recommendation. And then when we do the next bond, we bond for B and E. Because it saves us then because it's more mill and overlays, and it saves us from having to do more work on the roads Gary just said.
I think we should. So I'm looking too at how much. Again, trying to manage. That's a lot. That's a lot of projects and a lot of areas to manage. That's one of the things I'm looking at too. And if you did Morning View and North Arm, those are fairly close. They are different though, because Morning View is urban, North Arm is rural. But I do think we need to look at all of the mill and overlays. So what if you did Eastview, North Arm, and all of the overlays?
So what's it number?
So cut out Painter Road then, or cut out Painter Road then?
Well, it would be that area. That's 739. See, that could be added in with Marina Ridge. Let's see. So it could be Painter. See, Marina and Ridgewood are all close together. They could all be done together.
They're full out about $1 million or so, right? The
Right.
739, the 199, and the 206. Is that right? Or am I doing that wrong?
739. Where is
That's C4. Is that where?
I think just C2.
C2.
Or just
C2.
C2?
Just C2. Okay.
C2 is 739. I don't know. Ridgewood is 199 and Marina is 206. So you could even possibly do those without a bond. If you did Painter area, Ridgewood, and Marina in a year, you could possibly do that without a bond.
That's true.
You might wait. You might have to wait 2 years, but
Well, yeah, because if we're going to do it the next year, we would
Right.
just bond for it with this project.
they need to be replaced anyway. Or you could do all of those with Kings Point in a couple years. But then you'd have to bond again. So again, to try and get wrapping our arms around these projects, I still think our best bet is to try and get all of the mill and overlays done. I don't know if you would get them all done in Hunter's Crest, but if you did phase 1 in Hunter's Crest, and then you did Turtle Creek, and you did Sunnybrook and Painter Creek development, what would that be? See, I don't have the breakout for phase 1 in Hunter's Crest. What is that? Do you know?
For the mill and overlay.
Yeah.
I'd have to pull that out as well.
For phase 1 of Hunters,
Yeah, just the mill and overlay roads.
that's not just mill and overlay, that would be reconstructs. There'd be, because it's only going to be Hunter's Court is already done, Pheasant Crossing's already done, so you'd have all of Gander, which is pretty much going to be reclaim, reconstruct, and then you'd only have Glacier Road.
But I need a number.
Here, I can get it for you.
I mean, if we can save these roads and then push off having to reconstruct them, do those now so that they're good. The roads that need to be redone, we'll have to bring back, and then they're gone anyway.
I get 230,000 for those mill and overlay roads and that phase 1 of Hunter's
So we're
Crest.
talking just under $2 million for all of them. And then if you're talking 5 for Morning View, that's 7, and then North Arm 1.3, that's 8.3.
That sounds like a good one.
And then we can bring back, you can bring back the Painter Road area, even in just do that in 1 year, but you could also add Ridgewood and Marina, and then, and again, I'm not saying next year, whatever, I'm just saying you could put those together. You could also put Kings Point Road together if, depending on how we handle that water line.
Okay, Jasper, where's your head on that?
I think it's a good approach. I think either one would be beneficial. I think we'd have to do a little. Allison's already doing it, calculating on the fly of the resolution to authorize some of the work, but because Hunter's Crest is kind of getting broken up into some mill and overlay projects, but I mean it's doable. It's a good approach. I think the biggest thing, and I think multiple council members have touched on this, is making sure we're hitting our mill and overlays before they turn into full depth reclamations. And I think this would do that. That would help.
So which roads and Hunters then?
He said phase 1, and I'm not sure exactly which.
So the mill and overlay ones, and there's a section of Hunter's Trail from Linden Park to Bandy. That's mill and overlay. And then Glacier Circle and Glacier Road. Those are the ones that were slated for mill and overlay.
So there's only 2 that is slated for mill and overlay?
3.
And just
well,
have,
Hunter's Trail, though. Okay, I'm taking Hunter's Trail out because that's MSA.
Okay.
So let's say we can do Hunter's Trail with MSA dollars and do phase 1 of mill and overlays. Does that make sense?
Okay. So phase one, without mill and overlay only, without Hunter's Trail is 209,000.
Okay, that's what I thought.
And just FYI, St. Bonnie is looking at doing their side of Glacier next year. They're doing a complete reclaim. Ours does not need that, but it might be worthwhile to look at that as a part of their project. To see if we could tie in with whoever they, come and, at least for that stretch there. I mean, because it ties in. Depending on what you're going to do up there, I mean, off of that road also comes Games Drive and landings up there too. Something to look at. I mean, the curb's already been done. My guys have already done all the curbing in there, so it would just be a strict mill and overlay.
Well, and we do have some funds in the budget, in the reserves, but we don't want to use all of them, as Kathleen was saying before, because then we can use it for the payment. But I'm feeling a little more comfortable with the 8.3.
Yeah,
I am too.
Okay.
So
And then
read those off again, Lisa. You've got
So and here's the other reason. Eastview and North Arm are major projects. They're reconstruct projects. So again, it's going to take a little more to get those done. So Eastview, North Arm, and then all of the, it would be the Painters Creek Preserve, mill and overlay, miscellaneous overlays in the Sunnybrook area. Turtle Creek would be all included in that. And then phase one, basically, of Hunter's Crest. The Glacier Circle, Glacier Road overlay. And then with MSA dollars, we would be doing Hunter's Trail. Does that make sense?
The only thing I would recommend, if we're not going to do Gander Lane with this part of the project, I would still maybe look at just doing a thin mill and overlay, because you're going to redo a section of road, and you're going to have all that equipment come in to do all the other phases, and you're going to be on top of that brand new road. So you might want to look at just, like you say, pushing and just doing that area with a thin mill and overlay to get you through until you're ready to do
what is the cost
reclaim.
to do that?
About $250,000-260,000
for that.
Just for that side with a thin mill. That was actually an inch and a half.
No, I mean to do the reconstruct. You're talking.
Oh, the reconstruct on Ganders. I don't know what. Do you have my list or not? Mm-hmm. You should be right on. It should be pretty easy to.
Because I hate to spend money on mill and overlays if it's only going to get us a few years, versus if we do it right,
The cost for Gander, as proposed, which is full depth pavement removal and reconstruction of one section, is just over $1 million.
Okay, that would be too much.
But a mill and overlay on it is about $250 and gets us.
That's just for Hunter's Trail, just to get that. And is in really bad condition, and that's what most of the people are complaining about out there, is that area for sure.
I'd have to look at a map to see where phase one is. Okay. Well, let's put together the numbers and tell us where we come up with about 8.3, maybe 8.4, maybe. And then let's also kind of give people heads up, if you will, what we're thinking in terms of future. So we're looking at the ones that are still on this list are Kings Point Road, the Painter Road area, and then parts of Hunter's Crest, right? Mm-hmm. And then, Ridgewood and Marina. So if we bundled those together, are we looking at another one in 2 years? Are we looking at another one the following year? I mean, what are we thinking in terms of bonding?
At least two.
What, 2?
Yeah, because next year we're bonding for the water. I'm not going to do another one next year too.
Okay. I mean, then we're talking 2 years.
Yeah.
Approximately. I mean, it's just, I think the people on Kings Point Road would like to know, but I think, it would also be good to give the people on Marina Drive and Ridgewood and Painter heads up too.
Well, I think the year or two might give some time to figure out what to do with the water on Kings Point Road too.
Okay.
I mean, you try to figure out
How to structure it and how that would work. Okay. All right. Well, you're not going to get your new road next year, but it's coming, and we'll figure out the water. So, and also, I think we'll be having assessment discussions too. That'll give us some time for assessments discussion and how that's going to work, so people aren't looking at $23,000. We'll have to do that for these upcoming ones as well.
Yeah.
All right. What? Tell me, Gary.
Oh, I've just asked her what the cost of a thin. I don't have the computer. I'm sorry.
Right.
Just what, I mean, even just to get, again, like Kings Point Road, what would a thin mill and overlay to push to help them at least get, a road semi-decent to help push that out too? What would, do we look at doing something like that in that area? I don't know. I'm just
Well, we could.
throwing ideas out there. I mean, it's, something to think about.
Yeah.
Do you not,
Well, we were going to do that on Painter Road, remember? And then the Corings came back and said it wouldn't.
Well, we know the road. I mean, I'm just saying. I mean, it's not. This would just be a bigger Band-Aid to get us through the next couple of years. I mean, you're going to spend the money doing a thin mill and overlay, or do you want to patch it for the next couple of years again? Because we're going to have to go through there and do heavy patching.
Well, why don't bring that back? That's something we can discuss again or whatever. I mean, that's not a huge project to add if we had to or wanted to. All right. So, do we know what we want to do now?
Can I read it back to council to make sure that I've got my marching orders? All right, so what I heard council is to proceed with what we're referring to as Project Area A, reconstruction of Eastview, Morningview, Westwood. Project Area C1, which is reclamation of North Arm, Trails End, and then there was a mill and overlay of timber. Area C3, which is mill and overlay of Painters Creek neighborhood. Project Area C4, there's the mill and overlay of Sunnybrook Circle. And then, did I hear that we're including Ridgewood and Marina, or those?
No, those will be done when we do Painter, and
I had
we
question
can group
marks.
those
That's
together.
what I was thought I heard.
Yeah.
Okay, and then Project Area D, Turtle Creek, which is a majority is mill and overlay. And then Hunter's Crest, we were looking at doing the. Okay, why do I have a number? I have Hunter's Trail, mill and overlay, Highway 7 to Park, which would be state aid roads. And then we had the Glacier mill and overlay, the other mill and overlay roads of the north section. And then looking at mill and overlay of the north end of Kings Point Road to prolong that a little further.
And we can, look and see what that'll cost.
Okay. That's what I have. If I'm missing anything, okay. Okay.
I think that's enough. So just a real quick question before we adjourn. If you do a mill and overlay, like take Kings Point because it's not in great shape, but you do a mill and overlay, will that give us like 5 years? I mean, would it give you?
You would hope so. I mean, it's it all depends. I mean, how much movement you get out there and stuff like that. So there wouldn't be much milling. It would just be a straight overlay out there, which is kind of nice. I mean, but yeah, I mean, it all depends. I mean, you're praying that you get that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and if you look at Halstead Avenue, we overlaid that 2 years ago. It's looking good.
Halstead Drive, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Well, even like just I've been monitoring too the ones we did on Game Farm. We did Retreat. We did Sterling and Fielding and all them, and they're really holding up good for what they are. And those are pushing 3 years.
But Gary, we didn't do a thin. We did a 2-inch overlay on those.
Yeah, those are a little bit different,
So
So I mean, this gets it. It'll be a little different. I mean, they are going to have reflective cracking coming through. Don't get me wrong. I mean, this is not going to be the cure all, but at least it gets you,
right.
Through it a little bit. So
all right,
until you can make the decisions.
So maybe 3 years.
Yeah.
Could be 3, could be 4. You might get 5 years out of it. you know.
And that's something we can look at, because maybe at that point, then we do, let's say we do this overlay, mill and overlay, and then we monitor it, and 2 years from now it still looks good. We hold off on doing another bond. We wait until we have to do it. You know what I'm saying? Maybe it's 3 years, maybe it's 4 years, and then we say, okay, now it's time. Now we're going to bond for Painter and Ridgewood and Marina and Kings Point. And maybe there'll be others too at that point. Painter is not in that, it's not as bad as Kings Point. I can tell you that. So, I mean, maybe you know better, but when I've driven down it, it doesn't seem to be that bad. Not as bad as Kings Point. All right. Okay. I think we are all in agreement. All right. So, is there a motion to adjourn the work session?
So moved.
Thank you, Kathleen. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Ms. McGregor, all those in favor signify with aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion passes 5-0. Thank you. And we will reconvene at 7 o'clock.